It's time for Hall of Fame broadcaster Al Bernstein to interact with some of the most fascinating big name guests from the world of boxing and well beyond. Here's Al.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. Glad you joined us for what I think is going to be a fascinating interview. We talk on this show to the former heavyweight champion of the world, Larry Holmes. Larry, of course, held that championship from the late 70s through much of the 80s, and he was an extraordinary fighter. Larry had won the title in a pitched battle with Ken Norton in what was one of the best heavyweight fights, I think, of all time. A tremendous 15-round battle that ended with a split decision win for Larry. And then he defended his crown many times, oftentimes showing a certain vulnerability in fights that made him an even more entertaining champion. So here's our chat with Larry Holmes.
Larry, you had an interesting beginning to your pro career because you only had a short amateur career, like 22 fights. But then while you were fighting as a professional, you really learned your craft by sparring with top heavyweights like Ali, Joe Frazier, Jimmy Young, Ernie Shavers. How beneficial was that to you, and what did it kind of show you about your potential?
It showed me a lot. Showed me that I can hang in there with anybody. If I can get in the ring with Ali or get in the ring with Joe Frazier or Ernie Shavers and those guys, I can get in the ring with anybody. And that's what I concentrated on.
Yeah, and I would think the beauty of all those guys is you saw all kinds of different styles that you would then the kind of styles you'd face later as in your career.
Yeah, Ali had a different style, which is boxing, sticking the jab and moving and circling around the ring. Joe Frazier had a style that he's gonna come and knock you out. He don't back up for nobody. And same thing with Ernie Shavers and all that. So I was learning. They the way they box, so I can get my stuff going. I know how to back up because Ernie Shavers kept me backing up. I know
Yeah,
I know how to go forward because Ali will make you go forward. And
yeah,
I
great,
learned
great
that.
learning school.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, you didn't. The interesting thing that people kind of forget, and I was, right around. It was the beginning of when I was announcing boxing, so I remember it, and I was covering boxing for Boxing Illustrated and other publications when you won the heavyweight title before I got with ESPN. But doing stories about you. I remember this. You did not get your shot at a world title until your 28th fight, and you were 29 years of age. So you got it a little bit later. How did it impact you that you, even though you were certainly still a young enough guy and had a brilliant reign that lasted a long time, do you think that the fact that you had to wait and earn this opportunity made it even sweeter for you?
Yeah, you know what? I was kind of glad that I did wait because I got a chance to learn how to fight and learn how to fight
Mhm.
different styles. And that was good. Even look out back there in those days, man. You was out there, man. You covered these guys and everything else, and you never wrote a bad article about me. So I liked you from the beginning, and I learned from that, man. I learned from that.
That's
You have
interesting.
to stay cool
Yeah.
and
Oh, go
uh,
ahead. Sorry.
no problem. Go ahead.
No, and you created when you won the world championship, you and Kenny Norton, and I remember being there in the pavilion in Caesar's Palace to write about that fight, and um, you and he created what I think is absolutely one of the best heavyweight championship fights of all time. Did you have a sense? Of course, it was a dogfight, but did you kind of know that you guys were creating a classic moment?
No, that wasn't a part of my thoughts. My thoughts would go out and win if I can.
Yeah, right.
And Kenny Norton pushed me to that limit
Wow.
because he was on top of me every second, you know, and he hit me a little below the belt, and I never forget it. And I said, "You hit me below. Keep it up. Keep the punches up." And he told me, he said a whole lot of bad words to me that I shouldn't say on the network.
Okay.
But
I
I
didn't
was,
know that. I did. Well, of
yeah,
course, you guys had a little history. Before that, there was an altercation at his training camp, and there was some other stuff. So I know it wasn't all fun and games before the fight.
no, he didn't love me, and I didn't love him either. You know, but I respected him. I
Yeah.
respected him because he was, you know, he was the champ, and he was the man that beat the champ. So you know, I paid it no mind and tried to keep on doing what I was doing. But Kenny Norton would never be out of my mind. Everybody said, "Who you for the championship?" Kenny Norton.
Yeah.
Tough fight.
Amazing. And it came down to the 15th round, and you guys produced one of the great rounds in heavyweight history. And you had a great second part of that round, which is what sealed the fight for you. In fact, that is probably what won the fight because it was to be decided. And, you know, those were 15-round fights. Hard to conceive of that, I think, for a lot of fans now. But for you, the two of you, the pace you fought at to get into that 15th round and produce that round was amazing. You had to, finding that extra gear had to be difficult.
Well, I tell you what, your heartbeat was beating and listen, you guys made the fight too because you covered it and you said some things maybe true and some of them wasn't true. And Kenny Norton, you know, he was great. He didn't like me anyway, you know. He was going to try to kill me, you know. Even after the fight, it was just the same way, you know. He still didn't want to say nothing to me.
That's interesting. Yeah, and of course that fight I mentioned it was at Caesar's Palace, and that was in the pavilion. But then many of your fights, you fought 10 times at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and many of those fights, some of them were in the outdoor arena. The two of the biggest, of course, were against Muhammad Ali and Jerry Cooney, in which it was, you literally made Las Vegas stand still, which those great fights did in the 80s. Sometimes people now that have, you know, maybe weren't around during that era, they can't get the flavor of what it was like in Las Vegas in the 1980s for a big fight at Caesar's Palace. Can you describe a little bit about, as a participant, the way that moment felt to you?
Well, I still feel it, you know. I mean, all these years later, I feel, oh man, you know, what a fight I had, you know.
Yeah.
And Kenny Norton put on a great show. He tried to kill me and knocking me out and all that stuff. And I was just trying to win the fight, you know.
Yeah.
And
And
it
the city was alive during your big fights in Las Vegas. The 80s was an amazing decade, and a lot of that was, you were responsible for a big part of that. The whole vibe of that event, those events that you had, were amazing.
yeah, you know, Kenny was good. He was good, but you know, he wanted to win. He wanted to be the champion. You know, he beat Ali, which, you know, well, no matter what people say, he's in his mind he
Yeah.
beat Ali and didn't get it. Now he's gonna fight me and he's gonna knock me out. That's the only way he's gonna get to be the title, get that be the title. And he couldn't knock me out because I study him. I studied Kenny Norton. I watched him fight. I watched him, you know, and I was not going to go that way. I was going to win the title because, you know, a lot of people in Easton said, Larry Holmes, he's all right, but he can't beat Ken Norton. You know, so I had to go through that here in my hometown. No, they was rooting
Wow,
for Ken
some
Norton, you know?
doubters even there?
Yeah.
Amazing. That's amazing. Now, you had two amazing fights with Ernie Shavers. The first one, you completely controlled and dominated the fight before you were champion. And the second one, you won, and you ended up TKOing him. Of course, he knocked you down in that fight. And, you know, he's a tremendously powerful puncher. Was he the most, I know Cooney also landed some good punches, and you've said he's a hard puncher. Was Ernie Shavers the hardest puncher that you faced?
That I fought. Yeah, that I
Yeah.
fought. Jerry Cooney was next to that, but
Yeah.
but Ernie Shaver, you know, with his style and with his ducking and whatever, and hitting him on his head, he had a hard head. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
he was not a cakewalk for Larry Holmes.
No.
And I stood in there with him, and he hit me, and I hit him, and I came out victoriously at the end. And then they had him there to throw Jerry Cooney on me. I don't have to fight this guy. He's bigger than me, 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah.
And he punches hard as heck, you know, and you go get him half of the money. Don't get, you know, no such thing as the parity with Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney wanted the lion's share, but
Yeah.
we settled at the end of it for half of the money. And we put on a good fight. I think it's a great fight.
You know, you brought that up, and of course I was going to ask about that. That was an extraordinary promotion on many levels. Some not so wonderful because there were people involved in the promotion. Though I don't think that you or Jerry were among them, and you guys have become good friends since then, which is great to see. And I love both of you guys, so I'm thrilled that you guys are good friends. But there was so much deliberately done to try and make that fight seem like a fight between the Great White Hope and Larry Holmes, and that had to be difficult to go through.
You had Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton or whatever in the corner throwing that garbage around in the air, you know, so they had to hit
Rappaport and Jones, right?
Right, Rappaport
Yeah.
and Jones. And they had to hit Jerry because he hit me, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why I said, when the bell rang, when I fought Jerry, when the bell rang, I said to Jerry, I looked at him and I shook his hand. I said, let's have a good fight.
Great.
And that's what we did. We had a good fight.
Yeah.
You know, Jerry never forget that part there. And even when I was beating him up and start beating him up, you know, taking advantage of it, he stood there like a man, and he took whatever I had to give him. Yeah.
Jerry, yeah, you know, and it is interesting. And you know, what some people forget is, and you made a point of it, that while Jerry Cooney didn't have quite the right, they didn't really create the right buildup for him to fighting you, because they didn't put him in against the toughest competition prior to it. He stepped up enough in that fight to do some very good things, and he's a powerful puncher. So your victory over him should never be discounted, because you're, as you point out, you're facing this big, tall, power punching heavyweight who, if they had handled him better, would have had a better career.
You know, one of the things I did is got in a lot of arguments over that fight, because when people say, "Oh, Jerry wasn't nothing, Jerry wasn't this, he wasn't that," I said, "I tell you what, if you'd have fought, he'd have knocked you out in 2 seconds." Jerry was a puncher, man, and he can hit you. And I wanted to win the fight. I wanted to box him to win the fight because I knew he was a puncher, and I had seen what he did to the guys before me. And no, I was not going to stay there and take punches and trade with Jerry and get beat up. I was going to box Jerry, use my knowledge and what I learned from him in boxing, from Ali and Frazier and those guys, and go to get away with it, go out clean.
Yeah, you fought a great fight against him and got the win, and it was, you know, one of the more important ones in your career. You of course fought Muhammad Ali when he came back in the ring at I think age 38, and I've always wanted to ask you this, and I never really had an opportunity. During the lead up to that fight, in your mind, did you ever believe that Ali was going to bring the fight like some people started to believe he would, that he somehow had recaptured the magic at that age? Did you ever think he was a serious threat to you?
You know, tell you the truth, anybody who stepped in the ring with me, I thought they were serious, because they was hitting me, they were throwing punches, stuff like that. And Muhammad Ali was one of the guys that did that. And he talked to you crazy. You hit him, and that didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. Give me your best shot, you know. And it went on and went on and went on until, the referee stopped it. But no, Ali was my friend. He was a guy that could fight and he knew a lot of tricks. And I couldn't get myself to fall into all that mess that he was throwing out there, because he was throwing them out there and he could punch. He got to be in that position by beating the number one contender. So the guy could fight, and he was champion of the world, and the guys that he fought, like Sonny Liston and all them guys, he had to know what he was doing.
So even at that age, you felt there was danger there from him. And of course, you dominated most of that, virtually all of that fight. And, so many people talk about the ending of that fight and how at a certain point, you wanted the referee to step in, didn't you, to stop the fight?
Yeah, I told the referee, I said, listen, what I got to do? I got to kill him. I mean, I'm beating him up. I mean, because after the fifth round, he had to start going down, and I was taking the shots, and he would take those punches, man, and he said, come on, you ain't got nothing. Come on, my sparring partner, boy, you my sparring partner. Of course, I worked with Ali for 5 years as a sparring partner, but Ali still had a lot of tricks up his sleeve, and I didn't want to take no chances.
Yeah. Well, you fought a brilliant fight. When you look back on it during the time, is it hard to see what, I mean, obviously you made a lot of money for that fight and you exorcised demons of this man that, had preceded you and has a big shadow, but do you think you gained from beating Ali, or was it kind of a mixed bag?
Well, I think I gained, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of respect I got in the ring and out of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
People respected me.
Yeah, because of the way you handled it, right? Yeah.
I didn't beat him up, and and they knew, a lot of people knew that what I was doing, and I didn't have to beat him up. But a lot of people didn't like me because I could beat him up. I was beating them up, and they said, I hate you.
Yeah.
What I do? You beat up Ali. Ali the man. You ain't the man. You never be the champ. And I had to go through that. I said, but you know what? It was him or me. That's what I had to go through.
There's probably been very few fighters in the history of the sport who found themselves in a no-win situation as many times as you did, whether it was Ali, whether it was the Cooney fight in which, there was these overtones, whether it was going after Marciano's record, or whether it's going after it, just it being there, and all the terrible insults you took and all the rest. So you were like in so many situations where you were damned if you did and damned if you didn't. And that had to be hard mentally to go through.
It was really hard. It was in no-win situation. I win and I lose. What I want to do, go out and get knocked out because you don't want me to break a record. Can't do that. I'm going to go out there and fight. When God give me talent to fight, I'm going to go out there and do what I got to do. And it was hard, to the Marciano family and stuff like that. But it was never said that I was racist or whatever.
Yeah.
I fought him because he was the opponent. What color was he? I don't know what color he was. I think he was white, but it could have been black, as far as I'm concerned, because we was fighting. You know what I mean? My thing was not to look and judge him by the color, but judge him by the way he threw his punches. And, it worked for me. And so those that seem to fight know what I did, know that I let it go. And I didn't try to kill nobody. And all I wanted to do is win a fight.
Yeah. Yeah, you were great about being workmanlike and going about your business and tuning out the noise that oftentimes came. And as I say, some of it for you was difficult. You had through almost all of your career, most of your career, Don King was your promoter, and your relationship with him was a tricky one. when you like look at it in total and assess it, what's your overall assessment of your relationship with him and the whole uh, business mode of operation with him?
I tell you one of the things, I don't have hate for nobody. I don't, inspire nobody, We went out there, we did what we had to do. Either Jerry win or Ali win or whatever, but I was doing what I had to do. And a lot of people was out there hating me because of that. But I didn't care. I wanted to win the fight, go home with my trophy, my wife and my kids. I said I won the fight, and we had dinner and kept it quiet. We didn't want to be I beat Larry Holmes. I didn't want that. I just wanted to be me.
And was King, when you look at your overall time with him, was he more beneficial than detrimental in the long run?
It's like Dave.
50-50?
Yeah, that's what he was.
All right, I get it. Yeah, I get it. You had 20 title defenses, which is extraordinary, and that, of course, is something that will forever put you in the boxing history books. But it is interesting. I think one of your greatest moments, and this may seem odd, came in a defeat when you were 42 years old and you fought Evander Holyfield and made him go 12 tough rounds. I remember being at that fight, and I was covering it for ESPN, and I got on SportsCenter, and I said, this might be one of Larry Holmes' finest moments, even in losing, because you were older at that point, and you were 42, and you've managed to do that with Holyfield. Did you? I know, of course, the object is to win, but you must have felt that you acquitted yourself extremely well.
Yeah, I thought I did. I think I did good, but I didn't go into the fight to lose. I went in there to win, and I didn't care who I was fighting.
Yeah.
Evander Holyfield just got me one of those days that I wasn't really quite 100%. But we fought a good fight. He fought a good fight. He said some things that would try to upset me. Talk about, if it wasn't Marciano, it was Muhammad Ali, it was Ernie Shavers, it was Jerry. Because it was somebody always was throwing up to me. And why can't I just be me? That's all I want. I don't want to be nobody else. I don't want to, say that I'm better than anybody, was better than anybody else. I just wanted to go out there and put on a good fight and hope that nobody got hurt in the fight. That's all I wanted.
Well, you did that against him, that's for sure. So you ended up fighting Mike Tyson right toward the end of your career, or at least. Yeah, we could arrange that maybe. Let's think about that. They're doing a lot. They're doing a lot of those fights now, so maybe not. Oh, you might. Well, I saw you comment. You had a funny comment when they asked you how you would do against today's heavyweights, and you said, "Well, I'm 70 years old. You can't." 71. All right, there you go. But if you had fought Mike Tyson during your prime, how do you think that fight would have gone?
I don't want to take nothing away from Mike Tyson, but you wouldn't have heard of him. You might have heard of Mike Tyson. Listen, if he'd have came up in the crowd of people that I came up with, he had to fight those guys. He had to fight them Ernie Shavers. He had to fight them Ken Norton. He had to fight them Ali. He had to fight them guys that was going to hit him and try to hurt him, and then they're going to talk about it. Like, that's what them guys wanted. They want bragging rights. And Mike Tyson would have gave them bragging rights. He won over me, so let him go out and defend it.
Yeah. Well, certainly you had the boxing skills that would have made it. He at the in your prime would have been extraordinary fight, and your boxing skills. Does anybody in the sport of boxing that you have seen, who are some of the people, if there are anybody, that you would say have a jab that is somewhat comparable? You have perhaps one of the best jabs, well, for sure, one of the best jabs in the history of boxing. What is, and I'm sure you admire people that can jab really well. Is there anybody that, or people that come to mind that you look at and say, wow, their jab's pretty impressive?
Yeah, I ran across a couple guys like that, and had a good jab, and I tried to teach them how to double it up and how to triple it up and how to counter off of it, and and that's it. But they don't want to use the jab. They want to go out and slug.
Mm.
You know, you got to use the jab, man. Get them. My thing, I always say, you got to make them drunk before you mug, and then you mug. You know.
Yeah.
So take your time, go out there and do what you got to do. Box, use your jab, use the jab. The jab will keep everybody right hand off your face if you throw it right.
And you just talked about, which I think is really interesting, with some people, they don't see that nuance. There are different ways to use the jab, and you use it for different purposes at different times in the fight, don't you?
Yeah, listen, I use it up and down and around. That's the way to go, up and down and around. Because you got to use a jab. If you don't have a jab, you ain't got no fighter.
Yeah.
If you don't jab, you can't just walk in on somebody and knock them out. You got to set them up with that jab. Wow, jab, wow, pop, jab, pop. We used to say, cut the tree. We call him cut the tree, Big Jack. That's what my brother called me. Big Jack, cut the tree. Because Jack Johnson threw them jabs. And I was doing the same thing that Jack Johnson did. And I got away with it. But
Yeah.
I learned as I went on, the jab was most important thing to use in the fight.
Yeah. Well, you had a great one. What, if you had to say the most satisfying moment of your career, or a couple of them, what would be the most satisfying for you?
Well, one of the things I wanted to do, and I did it, but I didn't want to do it that way, is Muhammad Ali, get him off my back. Because it was always, you ain't no Muhammad, you ain't no Muhammad. Muhammad would do this, Muhammad would do that
Right.
to me. And, you know, then we had to get him off my back, you know. And same thing with Ernie Shavers, you know, Kenny Norton. I had to get them off my back because people would have faith in these guys because they don't fought the Muhammad Ali's and everybody else in the world. And you want to see how I do with them. Well, I've done it. Now you can judge me.
Yeah, you did. That's for sure. And those were all great moments. So one of the big successes you've had in life outside of the ring is that you and Diane have been married since 1979, and she is a wonderful woman, and you two have a wonderful partnership and have always had. So what's the secret that you want to tell the world about how to have such a long-lasting and happy marriage?
Never say no.
The husband, just don't ever say no to your wife, right?
Don't say no. She wanted it, go get it. She wanted a new car, go get it. You know what I mean? But my money is running kind of low now, so you can't just go do that no more. But
you may at some point have to actually say no. Is that it?
yeah, you have to say no. She understands it. She understands. Hey, 30 years I've been married. 30 years I've been married to her. So I don't even know how many years I've been married.
Yeah, well, since '79, however many, it's a long time. Yeah, you two have had a wonderful relationship, and a partnership. It seems like, and she's been, how would you describe her as a force in your life?
She's always praying and always saying one for me. And I say, did you say one for me? I always say one for you. Don't even worry about it. And she's been a great girl. And I got 2 kids. One of them is 40, I think. I don't know. And my son, he's 38 or 39, whatever. I got a great family, and they know and they do right. They all educated. Something that I'm not. I'm not educated. They're educated. They went to school. They graduated. They went to college. I'm a dropout, man. That's how
Well, yeah, but let's also clarify that you had to quit school in the 7th grade because you were in a family of, you have 11 brothers and sisters, and you had to help your mom, who was a single mom at that point. You had to go to work, and so you took the hard route to help your family, correct?
Yeah, I don't want to take all the credit for that, but everybody did.
Yeah,
Everybody in the house had to help out. You
yeah.
know, you had to go out there and pick cotton. You go pick cotton. You go out there pick apples. You pick apples. You do whatever you got to do to bring food into the house so that
Yeah.
guys can sit down at the table and eat. And that's
Well,
what we did.
your character was forged from that, I'm sure. So you've done something that's kind of interesting, and you alluded to Easton before. Not too many people have put a town on the map, which you've done. If anybody says Easton, Pennsylvania, there's only one thing that they're going to think about. While the town has other attributes and there are other charms, at the end of the day, they're going to think about Larry Holmes. You put that town on the map. They erected a beautiful statue of you, which is wonderful. You got a street named after you, and I think people will appreciate it. But it must make you feel kind of proud that you are responsible for making a city known to the world.
Yeah, I'm proud. But you know what? People crazy. They don't care. They don't care what you did or who you are. Or
What have you done for me lately, huh?
Yeah, you know what I mean. So you just keep on doing what you're doing, and the good will come back out of it. And just be. I love Easter night because I love Easter because I can ride down the street to those stores and stuff like that. It takes 10 minutes to do that. And I ain't got to fight nobody, ain't got to argue with nobody. But sometimes you get a wise guy, oh, Larry Holmes, and give me the finger and stuff like that. But I don't care, now I am too old for that.
Yeah. Well, I think, I'm sure that 99.9% of everybody in Easton, Pennsylvania is grateful that Larry Holmes was born, and grateful that Larry Holmes did so many wonderful things to give that city its recognition. And I'm sure they're proud of your efforts, as they should be. And Larry, I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me. I remember those times in the 80s when I would cover your fights for SportsCenter. Ironically, I hardly ever got to announce your fights because they were on different networks than I was on. I finally got to announce a fight of yours a million years into your career against Butterbean, of all people. That was way after your championship run. But I was privileged to cover many of those. And the one thing I regret, you and I were both doing a lot of music in Las Vegas. You had your music group and I was performing. We never did a duet. Now that's a shame, right?
We get it together. Why we get together?
We got to do that. If you come out to Vegas, I'm still performing out here. You got to come out and we're gonna get together and do a duet.
What hotel you in?
I usually perform at the Tuscany hotel. So we're gonna get you out there and we're gonna see if once the COVID thing is well in hand, we'll all four go out to dinner and you can come over and we'll do some songs.
Yeah, we'll have a good time.
All right, Larry, thank you so much. And I appreciate you sharing your memories with us.
Hey, man, thank you for having me. My wife thanks you. My kids don't even know who I'm talking to, but I thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Larry. Take care.
All right.
So that was my chat with Larry Holmes. I hope you found it as enjoyable as I did, chatting with him about his reign as heavyweight champion and reminiscing with him a bit about what was a great time in the sport of boxing. Well, now I want to introduce my co-host, who will, among other things, help guide us through the questions that you have asked on Twitter at Al Bernstein, questions that you've asked me. And so with that, let me introduce Trip Mitchell. Hi, Trip. How are you?
I'm doing great, and that was fun to catch up with Larry Holmes. He was a great champion, and on a previous show, someone asked what was the best decade in the heavyweights, the 70s or the 90s, and you mentioned that, the 70s, obviously some amazing figures, but that Larry Holmes stepped in at the end of the decade and won a championship, and you tied it up nicely today.
Yeah, he continued, of course, into the '80s with great fights, and Larry was just probably an underrated heavyweight champion and maybe a misunderstood one as well. But I always found him to be a great guy, and I think he demonstrated that in that interview as well.
Great. Well, summer is heating up, and you've got a unification fight coming up that you're pretty excited about.
I do. On July 17th on Showtime, we have Jermell Charlo putting his titles on the line against another titleist, Brian Castano. So all the championships in the 154-pound division will be on the line when they battle in San Antonio, Texas. I'll be ringside for that, along with my castmates at Showtime. And it should be a really excellent fight. Jermell Charlo will be the favorite in the fight, but if Brian Castano can get past the first 4 or 5 rounds in that fight and get his engine going with that high volume pressure style that he has, this could be a classic fight to be sure. And that weight division has produced some excellent fights. All the fighters fighting each other, the top men. We just recently saw Erickson Lubin beat Jason Rosario in a battle of 2 men who had previously lost to Charlo, but were in a title eliminator match. And one of them will likely fight the winner of the Castano Charlo fight. So really looking forward to July 17th. Should be exciting.
Okay, and let's get to the questions. Boxing Head writes, and ironically, it's about unification. Al, with all the champions we have in boxing, it gets confusing not only for the casuals, but also for the lifelong diehard fans. Do you foresee at any point in boxing future one commission that runs it all, just like the UFC, one champ per weight class, and we all know who he is?
Yeah, I think that that's one of boxing's major problems, if not the major problem, that for casual fans and even fans that follow it very closely, it's difficult to know who's champion at any given moment in any given weight class. And, the great line by Ray Mancini from years ago when he was a world champion and there was another champion, Henry Arroyo, I think it was, from Youngstown, Ohio, the very same city he lived in, had a different world championship in the same weight division, which prompted Ray to say, how many worlds are there? So, that pretty much tells it all. That's a problem that boxing has that is not easily fixable, and I think is a problem that's going to continue to dog it. The only thing that has happened is there are a lot more title unification matches happening these days. We saw Josh Taylor in his fight with Jose Ramirez in a terrific fight where they unified championships. And we mentioned the one on July 17th. So that's happening more often. So hopefully that will somewhat alleviate the problem.
Okay, and let's go to the sport of women's boxing. Would it be feasible, Skinny Maine, by the way, asked this, would it be feasible or even possible to amend women's boxing rules to go to 3-minute rounds?
Yeah, it's not only feasible, it is advisable. And I think it's likely to happen in the near future. Almost all women boxers that you talk to, and we've had many on this show who have said it, they would all like it to be 3-minute rounds. I think the women want that. They want to fight the same distance as men, and they're quite capable of doing it. And it will change the nature of women's boxing. Now with the 2-minute rounds, there's this need to try and get something done. Now, some people say that makes it more entertaining, but I think women deserve the right to have those 3-minute rounds where they can, have a little more time to create the openings and the style that they want, and more time to get the job done in fights. So I think we're going to see that happen. The commissions will change that. I think we'll see that in the next several years.
And just on a personal basis, Al, is it tougher to do 2-minute rounds as an announcer?
Yes, because it goes by so fast, and you don't have one of the many things is you don't have a chance to do as much information about the fighters, because you want to call the action, of course, but you want to weave in those biographical notes as well, and you can't do that and do justice to the actual action as well.
Okay. And our final question from Mr. Mick. Who was the most difficult fighter to interview and approach?
Well, let's see. I have had a few problems with Adrian Broner in the last several years. I think people might have noticed that. He doesn't seem to dig me. I know that's a shocker, but so he's been pretty difficult. He's probably the champion for me of all the difficult interviews I've done or attempted to do. But I've had so few of those instances over the 40 years that they're noticeable only because there have been very few. For instance, Jeff Lacey, who's a former super middleweight champion, he had a few moments where he didn't feel like I was doing him justice during the fights we were announcing, and we had a few difficult moments in interviews. Nothing too dramatic, but nonetheless, he was not pleased, and he had a right to say it, but it made for some interviews that were a little tricky. And then Bruce Seldon, a former heavyweight champion, a brief heavyweight champion back in the 80s, he wasn't grooving on my commentary and let me know it during a couple of interviews. One interesting thing is that of all the interviews I've done, both on radio and television, I'll tell you what was one of the most difficult. It was with a comedian, Damon Wayans, who I had a wonderful interview with maybe 8 or 9 months before, when he was coming to Las Vegas to perform, I think at the Orleans or one of the hotels. We had a fantastic interview, and I used to really enjoy interviewing comedians on the show. Well, I did a phone interview with him, and he was you could hear the papers rustling in the background as he paid attention to everything other than me asking him questions. And he literally was not even remotely interested in what I was asking him. And I'll tell you, about 4 minutes into the interview, I shut it down. I just said, Damon, I said, I think it's a bad time to do the interview with you. And I said, thanks. And then I ended it, and he was saying, oh, no. But, that was ironically, that was the worst interview I probably ever had with anybody.
Was that on live radio or live TV?
Live radio, yeah, on my show on the ESPN affiliate in Las Vegas. And it was just not going anywhere. And the thing that was really strange about it is I'd had this great interview with him before. So, it happens sometimes.
Well, the worst is when that's a date, when you go out and you realize 3 or 4 minutes into the date that it's a good idea to shut it down.
I agree. That would be even worse. Yes.
Okay. Well, my experience was Kyle Busch, who was a 2-time NASCAR champion, hated being interviewed with me. And the year I had to do it was after he won 14 races. So there are 14 times at the end that I'd have to interview Kyle, and he hated it and I hated it. And
boy.
Yeah, not a lot of fun.
That's not good. For sure. Well, hey, listen, we appreciate everybody joining us on the show here. My thanks to Larry Holmes, of course, for his interview. Thanks to Tripp for his fine job. And thanks to all of you for watching. Thanks to the folks at Let's Do Something Productions for making this show possible. And we'll see you next time.